Hello and welcome to my channel In Search of Wonder. My name is Anne and this is my weekly reading vlog. So I started this vlog while we were on our vacation last week in Missouri, and so a couple of the clips are from there, and then we segue into this week when we were at home for a couple of days, but we were also gone for a couple of days. So this is spread over 2 weeks, so it's my weekly reading vlog, but 2 weeks. There's not much of the vlogging aspect here because I made a separate video, which you may have seen yesterday. I will put it in the description box in case you haven't. That is all about our actual trip to Missouri. So most of the footage from that trip is in that video, my traveling book tag. And then the trip that we took this week, I will be having an upcoming video about that, hopefully on Wednesday. So that is where all of that footage is. This is just strictly conversations about the books, plus some of what I hauled on my trip to Missouri. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, let's fill up this bag with the books and things I'm going to bring on vacation for my entertainment. Beginning with a Moonbow Night, one of my TBR books for a couple of things for the Prairie Trail Readathon and one of the other challenges. I forget which one. And then the Epic of Gilgamesh for my translated classic that should not take me long to read. A Man Called Uwe, because I did that in the challenge video that I did recently. The Indifferent Stars Above, also for the Prairie Trail Readathon. Biography of Laura. A surprise edition. My sister just gave me this. And I don't think she even knows anything about my Prairie Trail Readathon. She just, picked it up for me. And it says, De Smet, South Dakota, 1890. Young women growing up in De Smet live by 2 rules. Don't go out in a snowstorm and don't give your heart to Cap Garland. Let's see. Cap sees the world through the torch he carries for Laura Ingalls. Mariah's certain her love for Cap will be strong enough to break both bonds, and she's willing to risk everything to prove it. And then dual timeline, De Smet, South Dakota, 1974. How fun is that? Prairie Trail Readathon. Cotillion, I still have time to get this read in July, right? Woohoo! And then, for my devotions, Spurgeon and the Psalms, continuing to read that. And book journal number 1, book journal number 2, book journal number 3. Why does it bother me? That's upside down. And also it should be underneath these others. Let's do that again. Book journal number 1, book journal number 2, book journal number 3. That's better. Writing utensils. Kindle. Ready to go. Okay, so it's been a while since I filmed any of my thoughts about the books I've read recently, other than Emma M. Lyon, which I have finished 3 books in the past 4 or 5 days, and so I want to just clear those out of my brain before they leave my brain without me ever mentioning them. First of all, The Other Princess by Denny S. Bryce. I know I had talked about it some, but I was not able to film a clip when I finished reading it and had my final thoughts about it. And the truth is, that book, I was hate reading the last 25% of it, but I had gotten that far, so I just wanted to finish it. And I was so frustrated because the author, throughout the whole entire book, except for maybe the last little bit, portrayed the main character, the female, the heroine of the story, as incredibly self-absorbed, contrary. And by that I mean, when things were going well, she found a reason to complain. When she got what she wanted, she complained about it. She would find something to complain about everything. And she was constantly contradicting herself. And it was frustrating. It was like she was determined to be unhappy. Now, I know that obviously there are people like that on given days. Any of us can be like that. But so it's realistic. But for the main character to be like this the whole way through the book, it was just frustrating. It was incredibly immature, and that she was supposed to be the focal point of the story and the heroine of the story. And I think in many cases we were supposed to agree with her perspective on things. I didn't love it. And then at the end of the story, there was some character development and growth, but it was so glossed over. It was so quick. It was told rather than shown. And it wasn't enough to make up for the previous however much of the book that she had zero character growth at all. Now, when I was reading other reviews, to me, it was so blatant and terrible that I was like, how can other people like this book? But it had 4 something stars on Goodreads, or 3.99 or something. And so I was reading the other reviews to see what other people were thinking. And not a handful of people put it that way, that the main character was just not likable at all, and that she was just incredibly immature and terrible the whole way through the book. But other people put it this way, which I think they have an excellent point. They made an excellent observation that the main character, she was a child in the first 25% to a third of the book, and then for most of the rest of the book, she's a young adult, like a teenager. And so it comes across very young adult. And so, yes, very immature. And so a lot of people, they made that observation because of her, her age through the whole course of the story. They chalked it up to that she was, just a very immature person. And so that's why, it came across like that. So that's a good observation, a good point. The end result is I didn't love it. And I had wanted to love it, but I didn't love it. Instead, I ended up hating it, and I gave it 2 stars. So I would love to read more about this girl because she was a real person, Sarah Forbes Bonetta. And the author's note was no help at all in trying to determine, first of all, what characters were true in the story and which were not, what was real in the story, what was not. So I'd love to read more factual information about this woman, and I hope that she wasn't actually like that in real life, because yeah, that would be exhausting. So anyway, that was that book. And then I read the Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon, which was wonderful. Thoroughly enjoyed it. I still am not loving the direction the story is going at the moment, but I am pretty sure it's not going to stay going in the direction that it is right now. So I am holding out hope for that. I still have volume 8 to read before the next book is released, so I'm hoping to do that this month. And yeah, I really enjoyed Emma M. Lyon, though. It was wonderful, very good. Volume 7, loved it. And then I read Cotillion by Georgette Hare, which was a Pulpit win. And Cotillion is one that I have read. Within the first chapter, I was like, oh yes, I am very familiar with these characters in this storyline, and I know what's going to happen. But I kept reading, and I really enjoyed it very much. It's definitely one of my top favorite Georgette Hares. So, Cotillion by Georgette Hare. It was funny. It was amusing. I liked the 2 main characters. I don't always like how Georgette Hare portrays her male and female characters. Even if the story I really enjoy, I don't always love their characters, but these 2 I actually really liked. So that's what made me really prefer this one over some of her others, is that the characters were as likable just as much as the story itself was humorous, and the setting, was fantastic. She's always great with that whole Regency era setting and those vibes. So I really enjoyed that. And I picked up A Man Called Uwe by Frederick Bachman, and I'm enjoying it. I am. It has that perfect blend of humor and depth. There's an emotional depth there that I love, that's balanced with the humor. And I really do love that. I don't really know if it's my kind of story. So we'll see. I'm going to keep reading it for now, but maybe not. I can see why, a lot of people love this book. It's not one of those things where you're reading like, why do people like this? I can see why. I can see the very good qualities about it. I'm just not sure that it's for me, but I'm going to keep reading a little ways. I'm like chapter 5. That is what I've got going on. That is my little reading update from the middle of the country where I am right now. I am really enjoying this, The Indifferent Stars Above by Daniel James Brown, about the Donner Party. I just love his style of writing and how he's writing factually, so he's not trying to write a novelized version of events, but he is still taking the time to set a scene and to really place you in the scene. He's very good about describing it. I don't know how else to put it. So I want to read one paragraph. So he's focusing on one particular family that's in this wagon party, in this wagon train. And at this point, they have crossed the Missouri River, and they're getting ready to get into the meat of their journey, so to speak. So he sets the scene immediately after they've forded the river. When she disembarked from the ferry on the western side of the Missouri, Sarah found a movable village assembling itself in the woods. Perhaps 150 of her fellow emigrants were bustling around among tents and wagons, busily making their final preparations for the journey ahead. Men were shoeing horses and oxen, packing and repacking supplies, sharpening knives and axes, cleaning guns, gathering in small groups to study maps and consult guidebooks, talking politics, swearing, starting to get to know one another, sizing one another up. Women, too, were beginning to make acquaintances, edging up to one another and introducing themselves, gathering around smoky campfires to share folk remedies and recipes and gossip, trading small items and bits of advice. Some of them, like many of the men, smoked tobacco in long-stemmed white clay pipes as they talked. Older children helped their parents with the various chores. Younger children played in wagons or down along the river, skipping stones, exploring, looking for treasure, watching out for Indians, dangerous ones now that they've crossed the river. On the fringes of the camp, adolescent boys and girls eyed one another from afar and tended to livestock, talking to horses as they led them about, shouting at mules and oxen, snapping willow switches at their hindquarters to make them move. Here and there, someone sat in the shade of a tree reading a Bible or a book of verse or writing a first excited and optimistic letter from Indian Territory to someone back home. A few plucked at banjos or sawed softly at fiddles, trying out tunes. From time to time, people stopped what they were doing for a moment to swat at the mosquitoes and horseflies that pestered them. Dogs ran to and fro, yapping and making acquaintances of their own, bounding down to the river and throwing themselves into the water for the sheer joy of it, then racing back ashore, shaking off the water, and bounding back into the river again. The smells of wood smoke, of frying bacon, of coffee, and of baking pies melded together and drifted among the wagons. Isn't that just so perfectly descriptive? Like, you can imagine yourself right there in the middle of all of that hustle and bustle and seeing all of those moms, dads, kids, teenagers busy about their business and doing all of those things on the banks of the Missouri River. I just love that. Really enjoying this book overall.
back home from our journeys, and I have to say I went to several bookstores, thrift stores, actually only one actual bookstore I think, but several thrift stores and like flea market type places, and I definitely picked up some books. There were a lot more vintage books available in Missouri than I find here in my area. A lot of the books that are available in my area at thrift stores and the like are typically like current books. And a lot of times the bookstores, even the used bookstores, if they have vintage books, they are a very small selection and they are priced higher than the other books. You don't ever see them, almost never, at like thrift stores. So I was excited to see all the vintage reads there and, you know, just lumped in with all the other books. I did not find as many of the authors that I wanted to, that I've like heard other booktubers talking about who like to read vintage books, but I did find a few things. So let me just show you what I got. Most of these books, like I have a whole stack here and I don't know where I'm going to put them. Honestly, should I have got them? Probably not. But anyways, apparently I was in the mood to buy some books. So I did. And they were like $1 or 50 cents, $2, whatever. So first of all, I actually got two books from the same series by Lynn Austin, who is a highly acclaimed Christian fiction author who writes historical fiction. And I have read one book by her that I really did enjoy. And so I do want to try some more. I don't know that she's going to be like a super favorite of mine, but she writes historical fiction. That's my favorite. So I do want to read more by her and see. These are from the same series, the Refiner's Fire series. I don't know which one is book. I don't know if these are books 1 or 2. I was having trouble finding that information on here. Oh, here we go. The Refiner's Fire series is 3 books: Candle in the Darkness, A Fire by Night, and A Light to My Path. So I don't have book 1, but I have book 2 and 3. So Fire by Night by Lynn Austin and A Light to My Path, also by Lynn Austin. So when will I read these? I don't know. So that's those. I did get a couple of things simply because they are related to our readathon that is going right now, the Prairie Trail Readathon, and they caught my eye because that's on my mind, and so these books are related to that. I probably won't read them this month, but if I do the readathon again next year, I will definitely put these on the short list. First of all, I got this, which is really cool. I guess it's not like a self-published book, but it's also not a like widely published book, if that makes sense. A 2-dot book, I don't even know. But anyway, it's very much a book of local interest. So it's called Love Untamed: Romances of the Old West by Joanne Schreier and Chris Entz. And it takes some famous couples and tells their story. Well, famous, like Doc Holliday and Kate Elder, Frank Butler and Annie Oakley, and then a bunch of others that I don't necessarily recognize, but they are more well-known. They're Marcus Daly, Margaret Evans. Anyway, so it tells their love stories. And of course, they're all set in the Wild West. So there's like a dozen different short biographical stories about their love stories. So I thought that was really cool. Love Untamed. I got this copy of O Pioneers by Willa Cather. This one I kind of saw as a souvenir. I love to pick up books as souvenirs. And this is set, I think, in Nebraska, and I was in Missouri, but still, you know. It was at a thrift store for like $1 or whatever. And I definitely, oh no, this one was at a used bookstore. So I definitely want to read this at some point. I may have read it as a teenager, but I don't remember anything about it if I did. This one caught my eye also at the used bookstore, The Folger's Guide to Shakespeare, because I just went to the Folger's library last week, and that's here in DC. And that's a video that I have. It may or may not be out by the time this video comes up. Probably will be. But the Folger Shakespeare Library is a collection of books by the Folger family who collected Shakespeare's works. They collected his first folios, and they have more of his first folios than I believe any other single collection in the world. Plus, they collected all sorts of books related to Shakespeare's time, as well as to the topic of plays and playwrights, particularly in the Renaissance era. And so they have a whole library. Researchers can go and access these books that they have, but they also have a museum and some galleries where people, you know, like me, can go and just look through the exhibits. Fascinating, interesting, beautiful building. So this is their guide to Shakespeare, and it is an indispensable companion to the study of Shakespeare, including complete synopses of the plays. It has a brief biography about William Shakespeare, and then it has some, you know, information about his family and the printing of his works, the chronology of his plays, and then it goes through each of his plays and has a short synopsis of them and information about them, and then it has information about when his plays were performed and where, and then a glossary of characters, narrative poems, his sonnets are at the end, and then significant historical dates and a bibliography at the end. So a really informative little book here, and I am excited to have that resource and put that on my Shakespeare shelf. And then this one was at a library book sale, and I just picked it up because it just seemed really interesting. And I think it's a young adult novel, historical novel. It's called Betsy and the Emperor. It says 14-year-old English girl Betsy Balcom and her family have an unusual house guest, Napoleon Bonaparte, former emperor of France and the most feared man on earth. Once lord and master to 82 million souls, now in 1815, Napoleon is a captive of the British people. Stripped of his empire and robbed of his young family and freedom, he is confined to the forbidding rat-infested island of St. Helena. The one bright star in Napoleon's black sky is Betsy, a blazingly rebellious teenager whose family is reluctantly housing the notorious prisoner. Betsy is the only foreigner Napoleon's ever met who is not impressed by him, and Napoleon is more than intrigued. An unexpected alliance is formed, and a remarkable friendship between emperor and girl spawns gossip and inspires Betsy to hatch a daring and dangerous scheme that could threaten both their lives and shake entire empires to their foundations. So, I just think would be very interesting. Sounded intriguing to me. So I picked that one up for 50 cents. And then these are some vintage books that I found. And I literally just picked them up because they looked interesting to me and because they were these interesting vintage copies. So first of all, we have Daughter of Eve. This is a novel about Pocahontas by the author of The Conqueror's Wife, Noel B. Gerson. And I've never read anything by him. I loved these end papers here with a map of Virginia, etc. And so I guess it's like novelized biography about Pocahontas, or Rebecca Rolfe as she was later known. So could be interesting. Not sure how accurate it is, but and then this, Letty by Claire Darcy. I know nothing about this author, but I was intrigued by this cover. And it says, and the fact that it's Regency. A romantic novel set in Regency England and the glittering Vienna of the Great Congress. So it also has the city of Vienna. So anyway, it's in really good condition, actually. Let's see, when was it printed? Oh, it doesn't say. Oh yeah, 1980. So, wow, that's the year I was born. I don't know anything about it. Again, I'm just intrigued by it. The cover looked interesting. Regency, we'll see. Who knows? And then finally, this one, Silver Hill, a new novel of suspense by the author of Columbella by Phyllis Whitney, which Phyllis Whitney is a vintage author that was kind of popular when I was younger, I think. And I hear people talking about her who like vintage reads. This one was printed in 1967. And it is a romantic suspense novel, which is not my usual fare, but it's in stellar condition for being 1967. Interesting cover. Anyways, I was just in the mood to pick up some interesting looking vintage books, and it was only $1 at a used bookstore. So that is my little haul from our trip. And where will I put the books? When will I read them? I don't really know. That's a bit of a problem, but you know, we'll figure it out. We always do. Home, sweet home. We are back home, and I finished my first book of the Prairie Trail Readathon, and it is August 4th. Yes, so August 4th, and I finished my first one, And this is for the dysentery prompt to read a historical fiction set in the era of westward expansion. This is called A Moonbow Night by Laura France. It was, okay, I'm sorry if you can hear my son. He is very noisily playing video games. I've shut the door. He's downstairs in a different level of the house and I can still hear him. Anyway, it's technically set in 1777, which is prior to the time frame that I said, but I'm gonna fudge it a little bit. Also, when I read the author's note, a lot of the things that happened or the situations in this novel, not a lot of them, but some of them, in particular, the inn or whatever that this story is largely based on, were from the 19th century, not the 18th century. So she just like bumped the timeline back. So the real things actually happened within the time frame of the readathon. So we're gonna go with that. It was a very interesting story. Unique setting, unique characters. The girl in this story, she was very much comfortable on the frontier, scouting in the woods, traveling through the wilds of Kentucky, fording rivers, building from the land, eating from the land, foraging, all of that stuff. So it totally fits within the whole entire context of this readathon. So I also found the concept of the moonbow really interesting, and it's set in Kentucky, and apparently Kentucky is one of the places where you can see a moonbow. They're actually pretty rare. Anyway, it was a very interesting book, and it of course deals somewhat with well, not somewhat, largely, it's a huge part of the plot, and the author actually doesn't really take sides on the whole issue of Native Americans and the settlers. It's also tied up with the Revolutionary War and how the British government was playing the Indians against the settlers and against the colonists and all that stuff. So there were a lot of divided loyalties, and Laura France, the author, doesn't really like take a side in this story. I kept looking up so many things because her research is amazing. You feel like you're in that setting, in that time, and she mentions foods that they would have eaten and stuff. I had to look it up, like rockahominy and metheglin, which is a type of mead, like a spiced mead, that would have been common at that time, and other stuff that she mentions, and ways that they dealt with wounds and injuries and sicknesses and illnesses, and ways that they dealt with bug bites, that kind of stuff. Fascinating, really, really interesting. The author definitely, she's well versed in this era of history and everything like daily life in it. So impeccable research. And I don't always love every book by Laura France, but I really did enjoy this one. I think I will settle on 4 stars for it. So that's that. I am reading The Indifferent Stars Above, which is about the Donner Party. And again, I kind of put a pause on it so I could concentrate on finishing that one. So I'm like, I don't know, 30% of the way through that one. And it's very interesting. I think I already mentioned how much I love the author's writing style and how he just immerses you in that setting. So really loving that. Anyway, so that is where I will leave things for now. And I will film another clip later this week. I'm going to be gone for a couple of days, and I'm quite sure I won't have time to do any vlogging for this vlog. But I may make a separate, shorter video of my activities this coming week for a couple of days. So stay tuned for that. I don't know when these videos are all going to get posted. I have so many like vlogs and whatever. We'll see. Anyway, so that is all that I want to share for now. I will film another clip later this week when I have read a little bit more in my Prairie Readathon reads. It is Friday, and I'm going to close out this vlog soaking in a little bit of the August sun, so I apologize if the lighting is super bright. It's the middle of the afternoon here and the sun is high and I'm squinting, all the things. Final update on my reading for the past 2 weeks. I realized that I forgot to update everyone on the status of A Man Called Ova by Frederick Bachman. And the end result was that I decided to DNF it. I can see why people love the book. The writing was excellent. I found no fault with the writing. And the topic, I could see where the story was going, and I could see, you know, how the plot was developing and what the themes were and everything. And I thought those very worthwhile. I skimmed a little bit, read a little bit of the ending. I feel like it probably is truly a lovely story. I may be interested in watching the movie. I don't know how close it goes with the book, but I think it follows a lot of the same themes. All that to say, I did in fact DNF it, and I ended up depositing it in a little free library somewhere in the middle of Missouri, in a little town there. And I was a little bit disappointed because I was really actually thinking, well, I was disappointed. I didn't know what to expect going into the book, but I know a lot of people loved it, and given all the things that I loved about the book, I wanted to love the whole thing. But I just couldn't get past the amount of profanity in the book. In particular, the taking in vain the name of Jesus. That's something that I don't like it. I don't enjoy it when I read it in the book. It hurts my heart, and I just couldn't. It was interfering too much with my enjoyment of the story, as much as I think that the story had wonderful things to offer for the average reader. And I think that there are many people who would really love that book, and I think it's really well written, but I just couldn't keep going with that. I didn't enjoy it enough to override that aspect of the book. So I gave up on that one, sadly DNF'd it, and deposited it in a little free library. So the last clip that I made was on Tuesday of this week, and on Tuesday I was cleaning up for our 1 week-long trip, doing the laundry and, you know, then packing and getting ready for my husband and I to go on a quick getaway. But also our boys went to stay with their grandparents for a couple of days, so we all had like a quick getaway, and we all had a fantastic time. But that means I got very little reading done on Tuesday, and so I've not made any progress on The Indifferent Stars Above by Daniel James Brown, which I'm a little bit disappointed because I really wanted to read more of it. But my husband and I were taking the train to New York City on Wednesday and Thursday, and we were only taking a backpack with us and the absolute necessity. So I did not bring any books. I only brought my Kindle and what I could read on my Kindle. And so I didn't bring any physical books. I did intend to bring this in the car to read on our way to drop the kids off at the grandparents' house, which would have given me about an hour's worth of reading in this book, but I totally forgot it. And I was kicking myself because I wanted to read more in it. We got back really late last night. I slept in this morning, and since then I have been doing catch up on all of my booktube life and my reading life. That's really all I've been doing today: editing videos, filming videos, updating the things on my Discord, updating my reading journals, all of that stuff, and I haven't done any actual reading today. So all that to say, I have not had time to read any more in this, but I really want to read more. I'm excited to get back into it, but that's that. As for what I actually did read, I had 2 books in mind to read on our trip to New York City. Mostly I was thinking on the train because we, of course, you know, we only had 2 days in New York City and we had a pretty packed schedule. So I only read on the train and then the couple times we rode on the subway. And so on my Kindle, I had Emma M. Lyon, Volume 8, which I had about, I guess, a little over half of it. Well, I don't know how far I had gotten before we left for the trip, but I had Emma M. Lyon Volume 8, and then I also had in mind to read a book by Jamie Jo Wright, and I had picked one on my Kindle. I forget right now at the moment which one. Let me see if I can figure that out. On the Cliffs of Foxglove Manor by Jamie Jo Wright. So one of my goals is to catch up on all of her books, which I'm doing terribly at because I need to read at least like 4 of her books in a year if I'm ever going to get ahead of her pace of publishing. But anyway, I was going to read that to go along with the suspense prompt for January's Christian Fiction Readathon. Also, there is a Suspense Readathon for the month of August. So I was going to read that, and I had that lined up on my Kindle as well and downloaded and ready to go. But in the end, I didn't actually start that one. So that is next on the docket for me to start because I did finish Emma M. Lyon Volume 8. And so now I'm completely caught up on the Emma M. Lyon series, and that's good because I've read quite a few of them this year. I don't know when the next one is coming out yet. I'm presumably this fall sometime. So that gives me a nice break. I don't really like reading so many books in a series all at once. So now that I'm caught up, I can step back that pace, obviously, and just read them as they're published. So, or as I am able to get to them. So I really enjoyed it. The Volume 8 definitely has some more traumatic, I guess, experiences than in some of the other books. Every now and then she takes a turn on the journey where it gets a little bit deeper and we have a little bit more conflict and a little bit more emotion to work through and a little bit more, I don't know, confusion, uncertainty in the storyline. And so Volume 8 was one of those. So I'm really interested to see where things will pick up in the next volume that she's writing and what will happen from there. But as always, I enjoyed the writing. I enjoyed all of the literary references. I'm sure I missed some of them. I mean, a lot of them are blatant, but I think that there are others that I missed. But I think I love the camaraderie of the characters. I love the wit in the storytelling, and I love the charming character that is Emma M. Lyon. She's just a very lovable person. So really enjoying that, and I finished that one. So I'm all caught up on this series, and that also fits for the Wagon Train prompt for my Prairie Trail Readathon, which is it 10 points, I think? I can't remember exactly, but anyway, the prompt is to finish a series. So I finished a series, all caught up. So that also goes for the Prairie Trail Readathon, even though the theme was not related to that at all. I don't know what I will pick up next in terms of the Prairie Trail Readathon, other than finishing up the Indifferent Stars above. I really want to read the Pioneer Girl autobiography of Laura Ingalls Wilder. So that's definitely going to be something that I pick up and peruse. I may not read straight through all of it, but I'm definitely going to peruse that one. So that's high on the list. As far as fiction goes, the other one that is high on the list is by, I need to start this coming week. I'm going to start the buddy read of, I think we're reading Western Women by Sandra Dallas. Sandra Dallas? Yeah, Sandra Dallas. So that's the next one. Yes, I just remembered. So I am all set on books that are coming up that I'm going to be picking up and reading over the next few days. This coming week is getting back to my busy schedule of life. So I start our back to school teacher training week. Then we have a week off, sort of, before school starts, but that week is, definitely some time is spent during that week prepping for the new school year, planning all the kinds of prep work stuff that goes into that. So I will be busy with that week, and then the week after that we have orientation, and then school starts. Yeah, and the crazy begins. So I'm sure July was fantastic in that I was able to read so much more than I had been reading at all this year, and that was wonderful. My summer has had some moments of downtime where I've been able to read a lot and just really relax in reading. I've also had some really fun times, and I've done some really fun and amazing things. So I am grateful for all of that. So if I'm not able to keep up that pace of reading, that's fine. We're getting back into the school year, and that's what happens. So that is where things stand currently in my reading and in my life. So I hope you guys also have had a fantastic summer and that you are enjoying what you're reading. Please let me know in the comments what you're reading, and if you have any thoughts about the books I read. In particular, I want to know what you are reading for the Prairie Trail Readathon and how you were doing with that. Some of you were like woo, you have like far exceeded my expectations and my capabilities in terms of getting these points for the Pro Tour Readathon. So good job, everybody. Way to go. And that is all for now, and I will see you next time. Oh, I'm hoping this week, if I have the time, I'm hoping for my video this week to be a very special vlog with a very special exhibit that I was able to attend in New York City this past week. And I gave a little sneak peek in my Discord if you are in my Discord server. So yeah, I'm looking forward to sharing that with all of you, hopefully this coming week on Wednesday. So that's it for now. I will see you next time. Bye.